Hello and welcome to Coconut Chats, everyone. Today you've got me, Harita, and I'm joined by my friend Reesha.
Hi.
So we're obviously sitting in the same room, but we are interviewing someone who lives in Melbourne. So we're joined by him on Zoom. A lot of you will probably know who he is if you are a brown person living in New Zealand or Australia. He was born and raised in Melbourne to Sri Lankan parents, and he's best known as the creator and star of two television comedy shows, Legally Brown and Orange is the New Brown. His Netflix special, Nazeem Hussain, Public Frenemy, began streaming worldwide in 2019, and his YouTube special, Hussain in the Membrane, launched in October 2022. Nazeem released his first children's book series called Hilarious Hyena through Scholastic Australia in 2022. He's also a correspondent for both seasons of the hit Netflix series Bill Nye Saves the World with the American scientist and TV personality Bill Nye. As a stand-up comedian, Nazeem was awarded the Best Newcomer Award at the Melbourne International Comedy Festival in 2008. He's also performed around the world, including sold-out tours at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival and London's Soho Theatre, as well as New Zealand, Paris, Belgium, and many other countries. He opened for Dave Chappelle in New York City and across Australia on his national tour. He's also opened for Aziz Ansari's Sydney show in 2019, and he was invited to perform at the esteemed Just for Laughs Festival in Montreal as part of Kevin Hart's LOL network. Nazeem also became a fast household name in I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, reaching the grand final after 46 days spent in the South African jungle, and he chose the In Touch Multicultural Centre Against Domestic Violence as his charity of choice. He was an official correspondent. I've already mentioned that part, so I'll leave that out. There is a lot more that I could say about him, but then the interview's not about us, it's about him, so we'll let him do the talking. How are you, Nazeem?
I'm good. Thank you very much for having me. Sorry I'm late.
We made it in the end,
Made it.
only 40 minutes late, which
Oh my gosh.
is okay considering all three of us here are brown. So
Yeah,
we all
yeah.
know how this Indian Sri
Brown
Lankan
time.
works.
Yeah.
We're right.
It's,
We're actually early. It's okay.
yeah. This is universal. It's good to know that. That's something we have in common. I don't know what it is with it's I'm from Sri Lanka. The background, we've got island time. Everyone, there's no rush, like time is a construct.
I know. Same with our family in India. We're both New Zealand-born Indians, but we still very much know what Indian timing is like, even though we spent most of our lives in New Zealand. So, yeah, we just get it.
I think it's fairly intentional for me to be late. I just don't want to conform, to the white man's standards. That's my excuse.
That's like your silent protest. Like, oh, sorry, I've just turned up late. Deal with it.
Yeah, I'm just being countercultural.
Yeah. I know. I'm like that with my white friends too. I just say, "Oh, you know me. This is how I always am."
Yeah, this is how 1 billion people in India do this. So do you hate all Indians?
I know.
There's also Arab time. Look, I don't know what it is. It's just non-white people, I think. Maybe Chinese people. I don't know how they are with time. Japanese seem pretty precise, but I think it's just a brown thing.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Anyway, we all made it in the end, so that's all good. So I'd like to get to know a little bit about you as a person rather than just the comedy and what people in public see.
Okay.
What inspired you to become a comedian?
Oh, I mean, I never really, even now, now I'm a comedian, but I never decided one day I'm going to be a comedian. It just sort of happened. I've always been a bit of a sort of silly guy, whether it's at school, just being an annoying student that I'll do my work, but just completely distractible. And, even outside school, when I was a kid, one of my earliest memories was sitting on the front step when I was like 3, and my whole family were inside just watching from the window. And every time someone would walk past the house, I would just start talking to them in a really Aussie Ocker accent, like, "Oh, g'day, mate, how's it going?" And they would just see this Sri Lankan kid sitting on the steps, bantering with them. And like my whole family would be laughing. Even the person walking down the street would be really confused. And I just enjoy, I don't know, there's something wrong with my wiring, but I've always enjoyed being silly. So yeah, when I was at uni, I used to muck around at community events, Muslim community events or Sri Lankan community events when, the projector would break down or they needed an MC. They were like, "Oh, Nazeem, do you want to do that?" And I just used to kind of be very comfortable in front of audiences, just riffing with the crowd. So it was like a fun thing. Um, and then yeah, like sort of by accident, these Muslim comedians from America were coming to Australia, and they were looking for a local Muslim comedian to open for them. And someone suggested me, and I wasn't a comedian, but I was like, oh yeah, I'll do that. I like these guys, and so I just told stories as an MC, not knowing that there's a craft to stand up. And people laughed, and then afterwards, those comedians, they're called Allah Made Me Funny. They were like, oh, it was really funny. I think you've got some sort of ability, but yeah, there's a way that stand up is written and practiced and rehearsed. And they sort of sat me down and told me to work on it. And that's kind of when I was like, oh, okay. You don't just wing it. You have to put a bit of effort in. So then I started to take it a bit more seriously and entered an open mic competition called Raw Comedy, and one thing led to another, and here I am doing it full time.
Wow, that's really good. So then on the flip side, what would you be doing if you weren't a comedian?
Well, I was working as a tax consultant before this.
Oh, I'm an accountant.
Oh, there you go. I mean, that's why you're doing this podcast, because any escape from that life is a good one. So yeah, I'd probably be doing that job. In fact, when I left to do comedy, I was working there and I had Legally Brown, the show, got commissioned, and I told the partner at the work, I was just like, oh, this show's come up. It's a TV show, it's my own show. They've asked for 6 months for me to do it, but I don't have to do it. I could say no. And he's like, are you serious? The corporate world is always going to be here. This is your own TV show. You got to say yes. And I was like, really? And I was really trying to people please him at the time. And he's like, don't be an idiot. Just like this world is always here. So I did it and never came back because it just got busy. But yeah, in my mind, I was like, oh, I'll just do this for a little bit and go back to the suit job. So I probably would have. Well, I wouldn't be very good at it, to be honest, because you got to be focused, and I lose my focus pretty quick.
Yeah, I get that. I'm not a tax accountant, but I'm a management accountant, so similar field.
Right. Well, at least you're kind of creative. You guys have got to come up with new ways of doing business and stuff.
Yeah, new ways of
sacking people.
Yeah. So obviously, you come from a Sri Lankan background, and a lot of Sri Lankan and Indian people, tell their kids that they need to be one of 5 professions when they grow up. What reactions did you get from your family and friends when you made that decision to go into comedy full time and leave your tax job?
Well, I was living with my mum at the time, single mum, and I didn't tell her. It wasn't like I said, it wasn't a firm decision when I started. So I actually started working on that show, Legally Brown, but I would leave the home every morning in a suit, and then I would go work at the show. Yeah, and then I'd get changed back into the suit. And so a few months into it, my mum came to drop off lunch at my work, and the receptionist was like, "Can I help you?" She's like, "I just want to drop off lunch to my son." And she's like, Nazeem. And no, he doesn't work here. She's like, no, he's here. He left in the morning. And she's like, no, he hasn't worked here for months. And then my mum was like, what the hell? And she called me up, and I was like, oh, no. Anyway, she busted me. That's how I got busted, because she delivered lunch. I should have, anyway, I should have taken the lunch in the morning. But anyway, she was confused, stressed out, because no one leaves India or Sri Lanka to come to Australia, leaving behind everything they knew for some better life to then become a clown, put you through good schools and university to then tell jokes to strangers for a living. Like, she's tried to explain it to her family in Sri Lanka. They never really got it completely until they saw me. They thought that I was just telling jokes to strangers at the supermarket or something, like with a clipboard. Like, yeah, he tells jokes to strangers. He's very good at it, but they didn't know the context. But now that I'm, financially secure, I think everyone's calmed down a bit. That's all they want.
That's really good. Okay. So going back to your Sri Lankan roots, what was it like being a Sri Lankan growing up in Melbourne in the 80s and 90s?
It's like, I don't know how it is in New Zealand, but yeah, you very quickly feel different, especially like I went to a pretty a white school, not many ethnic kids.
So did I.
Oh, right. So you know how it is. It's just like, you stand out. like you grow up feeling different, which is not a feeling that should be normal for kids, but it was. Everything like to do with the accent that your parents speak, to the food that you might bring to school, to like your beliefs, or not eating halal, or not eating food that's not halal, or your religious halal. Like everything as a kid, you've got to kind of explain. And no kid wants to be different. Everybody wants to fit in. So you're constantly having to grapple with that. And for me, for my personality type, I'm someone that probably thrives on being like standing out a little bit. But I've got two sisters. My younger sister's probably a bit like me, and probably dealt with like questions or bullying in the same way, could kind of assertively give it back. My older sister's a little different, she's probably a bit more like a typical kid that would just go into their shell a bit, try to stay under the radar, dial down their difference. So it affects you in lots of different ways. And I'm sure I'm sure like there's something broken in me as a result of growing up being different for so long. But yeah, I also think like growing up being different, forming a strong identity as a result, knowing how to straddle different worlds, knowing how to not understanding everything about white culture, but also understanding your own culture. Like I think can only be an asset later on in life. Like I do feel for like people who are part of the mainstream who, there's a lot of benefits, being part of a white supremacist culture. But at the same time, like you lose out on that sort of enrichment we all benefit from being brown in a white country.
Yeah, I fully agree with that actually, because I'm a New Zealand-born Gujarati Indian, and at home we spoke Gujarati, but obviously at school it's English. And I used to sometimes turn up to school with Indian food and roti, and my friends would be like, "Oh, what's that?
What's that? That's weird." but now they'll be the ones texting you like about the new cool Indian restaurants that are fusion this and
I
fusion
know,
that.
and I'm like, where was this comment in the 90s?
I know. Where were you when I was copping bullying? But yeah, exactly.
I'm like, I don't know if you went through this, maybe because you're a guy, and also Australia might be a bit different to New Zealand, but did you ever grow up not being allowed to go on school camp and having to explain to your classmates why you can't go on school camp?
Oh my God, I've got so many school camp scenarios. Like one time,
My parents will hate me for this, but they never used to let me go to school camp.
Oh, what was their excuse?
You're a girl. This is not what Indian people do.
Yeah.
I went to a co-ed school.
Yeah.
Indian people don't do this. And they were the two reasons.
Well, fair enough. And then, like I did scouts, and I remember one time like my mum, like she let me go on scout camp because single mum, and I think also was like, all right, I've got to like let him be around other men to sort of like toughen him up in that masculine sense. But also, there's that whole stigma around scout camp leaders being pedophiles. So I remember one time, like, before I went on camp, my mum was like, Nazeem, some of these camp leaders might try to touch your bum. So if they try to touch your bum, don't let them touch your bum. I'm like what? I was like a child, not really, like freaking out about this inevitability. Then when I got dropped off, like she went to the camp leaders and like had these firm words with them, like like my son, like I have a lot of friends and connections, like threatening them, even though they were not pedophiles. But then also like was freaked out that I would drown. So I was like, my son Nazeem cannot swim at all. So if he goes near water, he will drown. So everyone was having fun on these camps, swimming, and I didn't get to swim because like the teachers were freaked out that I will drown if my foot touched the water. So she'd check in, like throughout the camp. I'd get like 3 phone calls. Nazeem, you got a phone?
Whose internet has died? Can't be mine. No. I think it's his internet. yeah,
Yep.
it was definitely him.
Okay, awesome.
So,
Does it still record this part?
Yeah,
Okay.
we can edit this
You can
out.
cut it out. Yeah. Okay. So then, do we repeat the question, or do we just go to the next one?
No, he'll just carry on talking. Here he is.
Okay, sweet.
Yes. Sorry, guys. It
Is
was
your
just my
internet not
was
good?
unstable. Yeah, I don't know what's going on.
Must be the budget plan.
I know, exactly. I've paid the bill and everything. Anyway, if it happens again, let me know.
Okay, we will.
Anyway, yeah, so school camp. Very, very odd situation. I'll tell you one thing. This is even when I'm thinking back, like I'm cringing. Like, I don't know what happened, but my mum got convinced that some guy was bullying me. And I think he might have been like lightly racist or something, but I was dealing with it fine. So all of a sudden I was on school camp day 2, and it's a whole year level. Everyone's having fun. Suddenly one of the teachers calls me and says, "Oh, hey, Nazeem, yeah, from tonight onwards, you're going to have to sleep in our cabin." I was like, "What? The teacher's cabin?" He's like, "Yeah, yeah." I was like, "Why?" He goes, "Oh, your mum wants you to." And I was like, "What?" Yeah, because apparently you're being bullied. I was like, "No, I'm not. No, I'm not." But they were like, "Look, we can't argue with her. She's insisted. Otherwise, she's going to pick you up." So every night, everyone hung out and slept in these cabins with their friends, staying up late. And I had to sleep with the teachers in the teachers' cabin.
Oh, wow.
So,
people are going to bully you more.
I know. I was like, yeah,
out.
exactly.
Oh.
Now I'm going to get bullied. So, surviving that sort of childhood and schooling life meant that, you come out bulletproof as an adult.
Yeah. Yeah. I fully get it. My and this is going a little bit off script, but my parents used to own the local convenience store that was the closest to the primary school I went to. So a lot of the kids and their families would go to that. In New Zealand, we call them dairies, but I think in Australia they're called something
Milk
else.
bars or something. Yeah.
Milk bar. Yeah. And so obviously everyone in the school knew that my parents owned the dairy. Couldn't really escape that. But that was besides the point. And there was this one guy in my class that used to tease me. It had nothing to do with being the child of dairy owners, like you'd think. It was something about being Indian. Anyway, so one day I just kind of told my parents, "Oh, this guy in my class kind of teases me." And he used to come to the dairy quite often. And the next time he came into the dairy, my dad fully told him off in front of me. And then he never teased me again after that.
But Dad.
I was so embarrassed. I was like, "Oh no, I didn't think this through. I didn't think if I tell my parents that Aaron is bullying me, what's going to happen the next time Aaron comes to the shop?" I don't know. I was only like 2.
You got it. You know what? Now that I'm a dad, I'm like, yeah, like now you appreciate it. But back then it's embarrassing that your parents told off another kid. But seriously, if a freaking kid bullies my kid, I'm gonna have a talking to them. I'm gonna put them aside one day and be like, "Hey, listen here, you little shit. Do you know who I am? I've got a white belt in jiu-jitsu."
You totally will.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of your comedy is about that, being a Sri Lankan person, growing up in Melbourne. But from the other side, like from an audience point of view, how receptive was Melbourne and wider Australia to your comedy when you first started performing compared to what they're like now?
Yeah, like I think initially you end up, I was just making jokes to make, like I said, I started out doing comedy in the community, Muslims and Sri Lankans. So I was just doing jokes for them. But as I was doing it more and more in public stages, like white people would come to the shows, and especially like post 9/11, like Muslims get talked a lot about, but never really do the talking themselves. And a Muslim comedian was also like kind of confusing for white people. So I think there was a lot of curiosity factor. They were like, "Oh, what are they talking about?" And I think so there was a lot of white people that just came to just sort of see how we joke amongst ourselves. And that's the other thing. I feel like white Australia and white probably New Zealanders, white people in general, often are so used to everything being directed at them. Even ethnic comedy, it's like the jokes are at our own expense, not how we'd normally joke amongst ourselves, because it is targeted to them. So I think yeah, the comedy that I started out doing, I still do, is just like stuff that makes me laugh and makes my friends laugh, and it's not about, like, it doesn't center white people. It's not for them. It's for the consumption of me and my friends and community. And some of them happen to be white, but it's not. So I feel like, yeah, they do enjoy being in on a conversation that they're not normally a part of. So yeah, it's fun to do, but yeah, like people criticize you, if you're critical of Australia as a non-white person, and but that comes with the territory, you know, when comedy is not for the validation of white people immediately.
Yeah, definitely. So you often make jokes about being too brown for Australia and being too Western for Sri Lanka. Why do you laugh it off? It is very common for us ethnic people growing up in Western countries to go through this, and it's been known to cause mental health issues when someone feels like they don't really fit in either country or culture. What do you think people in this position can do to improve the situation for themselves?
Look, I think it's just like, we just, you know, anyone that's got parents born overseas, like we're all, I don't know what you call us, but we're the diaspora, you know, we all relate to each other. So we've got a massive support network. And that's why I feel like comedy's fun for me, because I'm like, a lot of people that come, they're like same age as me. We've all grown up with the same experiences. And I, like I said earlier, I feel like those experiences just enrich us. Like we have, like we speak many different worlds. We don't just belong to India or Sri Lanka or our parents, the home country or our new home country. Like we're the sort of nexus between a migrant experience and like almost like, not I wouldn't say indigenous, but like a new homegrown New Zealand or Australian identity. So, you know, it's good. I feel like, you know, our parents' generation, they worked hard. They had to keep their heads down and they just endured a lot of shit, so that we can now take that and sort of thrive. I do feel like white people in these countries, like, you know, unless they've actively gone out of their way to understand other experiences in Australia or New Zealand, you know, are lacking. You know, necessarily we've had to like sink or swim. And so we're all swimming by this age. And we're more well equipped than I feel like the average citizen to advance our culture.
Yeah, I fully agree with
Because
that.
I don't feel like the West can really survive being like a normatively white society anymore. Like you need people to kind of like have a knowledge and like a visceral experience of being in multicultural, you know, settler colonies like Australia, New Zealand, to really kind of bring us forward. I don't know. I just don't feel like having a white view of the world takes us anywhere anymore.
Yep. No, that's very true. Even in New Zealand, like they're doing whatever they can to like celebrate Diwali, Chinese New Year, all the different ethnicities celebrations, and that's all being done like at a city council and government level now, right? Which is majority run by white people, and you know they're trying to include all of this because I feel like maybe they're realizing how boring their own culture is.
Yeah, or just
so
like
they have to bring in all the other cultures of New Zealand.
You know, like, and look, I feel like white culture is great. I like white people. I feel like we should put that on the record. But it's like but we know it inside out. Like with Christmas, we've celebrated it. We know the ins and outs our entire lives. We know all the songs and Easter and Valentine, all the white stuff we know. We're down pat with all that shit. But like, what about every other culture? You know, like we all pay the same tax, you know, like we own these cultures as much as everybody else does, you know? So when people say like, you know, like when people still act at our age, like there are host people and guest people, despite the fact that putting us like being born here, citizenship should just entitle you to that equality. Also, like that is as if like these countries were just formed by white people for thousands of years. Like they aren't also new migrants to these places. Like, you know, yeah, so we're all bloody immigrants, really. So just know your place, white people. It's just kind of how I feel.
Yeah, no, I fully agree with that. Yeah, it's very true. So I want to know, like, you've been to New Zealand quite a few times now, and in the times that you've been here, what's the weirdest or funniest difference you've found between Kiwi and Australian culture?
Oh, just like the prominence of like Maori culture. We don't, you know, there's like street signs with, you know, not just English. In Australia, there would be protests on the street. If there were any First Nation languages just on street signs. Or, you know, people are like, what the hell's going on? You know, even there's now like, we regress sometimes. Our debate goes backwards about like acknowledgement of country and like First Nations recognition. Like we just voted down voted
That's
down
what
the
happened
voice
last year,
referendum.
right? They got
Yeah, like
voted
there's,
no. Yeah.
you know, but even like at events when people go, oh, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of land, like there's big debates about, like more recent debates about whether that's just, we should just get rid of that, you know, like, just that, so like, it's almost like we're not advancing, we're in many ways going backwards, but, you know, at the same time, that's a political class and almost like the media class, whatever, but like ordinary people, like you can't stop progress on the ground. Like you go to any supermarket or, you know, you walk around the city or any major capital city and it's so multicultural. You know, we all have friends with, we're friends with people from across the, you know, the racial spectrum. Like yeah, people just want to get along. It's just, there's this real weird, like kind of last stand of like white supremacy in politics and culture. I don't know, the culture makers. So I don't know, it's going to die out soon and we'll catch up to you guys. But right now, yeah, I feel like New Zealand, you guys are just like years ahead of us.
That's good, we're ahead.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
you know, even like Taika Waititi, you know, like just seeing like culture makers not be white
all around the world.
There's a lot, like it's kind of that's ahead, that's so important, and that can only happen because like the culture celebrates that.
Yeah,
you know,
and because we support that person to grow and
well, if you support those, if you support diverse voices, you're gonna have people like Taika Waititi pop up and be given that success because, you know, if the groundwork is there from the people. So Australia's behind in that regard.
No, it's very true. I lived in Melbourne from 2014 to 2019, and my husband is a Melbourne-born Indian, and we now live in New Zealand. Obviously, we've been here for 4 years. He found it really strange, in a good way, how normalized Māori people were in everyday culture. That was one of the first comments when we moved here. So I'm originally from here, but he moved here with me. Because in Melbourne, the Aboriginal people are like pushed out to the outback. And even in the 5 years I lived there, and this is so sad, I could probably count on two hands how many Aboriginal people I ever saw on the train, tram, anywhere in daily life in Melbourne. And it was like, where are they all? It's because they get pushed out.
Yeah, and it's just, you know, and the sort of, it's very paternalistic, the sort of government policy towards Aboriginal and First Nation people. It's just like, we know best what they need and how to, and also there's like all sorts of racist policies that are enacted, whereas that doesn't, or it doesn't happen as easily in New Zealand. I know that's like, you know, there is like a pushback against like treaty at the moment, but at least like there seems to be like more resistance. Anyway.
Yeah, definitely. Yep.
All right. So then what have you noticed the differences between Kiwi and Aussie Desi people?
Oh.
Is there a difference? I don't know.
Let me just think.
You've met a few of us, right?
Yeah, I'm just sure. What's the difference?
Not just us.
I honestly feel like Desi people in New Zealand and Australia, I haven't noticed it. Like, it's weird hearing you guys talk in Kiwi accents. But then I realized,
you have an Australian accent.
Yeah, I know, which is so weird. And then I remember like one of the first times when I went to Singapore and I met like Singaporean Indians and they were speaking like you know, with the la, and I was like, what the hell's going on with your face? That's an Indian face, but you sound like Asian, Chinese. So that was like getting my head around that. But when I go to Sri Lanka, everyone gets confused as well. They're like, what the? Americans are so uncultured sometimes. Like they see me, Sri Lanka, they're like, oh, Indian looking guy speaking in an Australian accent. Like that breaks their brain. So yeah, like but it's so, yeah, it is very weird when you see, oh my God, England. I don't know if you guys have been there, but like they are, you know, like they've had, you know, they've been multicultural a lot longer than both our countries. But, you know, so like, I remember one time I was having a chat with some guy my age, like brown guy. And I was like, oh, so where are you from? And I meant like, where do you get the brown from? But because to be brown in London means just to be from London. He was just like, oh, I'm from Brixton. I was like, oh no, where are you? And that's when I realized, oh, so they don't even read the question that way. And I was like, no, where are you from? Like, where are you from? I felt like a white person. I was like, oh yeah, my grandparents are from like Pakistan. I was like, oh, grandparents. And then I realized, oh yeah, then at other shows I'd met like older, like 60-year-old Indians and Pakistanis with grey hair and all, they look elderly, but they're speaking full-on British accents because they've been there, like they were born there, which doesn't happen in our countries. Like in New Zealand, Australia, like
it happens in New Zealand.
Yeah, it does happen here.
Really?
Oh, so I'll quickly share something with you. because I'm aware of the time.
Yeah.
My great-grandfather on my mum's side came to New Zealand on a boat in 1920.
Woo!
Do the math. I'm third generation New Zealand born on my mum's
Sheesh.
side.
All
So
right.
me
You're
and
like
my
a rare
mum
Pokemon.
me and my mum sound exactly the same on the phone.
Yeah.
Like when I used
Wow.
to live at home and people used to ring to speak to one of us, they wouldn't know which one of us has picked up the phone.
That is
And
incredible.
yeah, so when you say that, I'm like, yes, because the same thing happens in our family.
Wow.
People look at my mum and they're like, hold on, you're
But see,
Indian.
yeah, you guys are the
Are you
exception.
Kiwi?
Yeah. Wow. Well,
Yeah.
there's like I know a family in Brisbane that I like that too. Like they came age, but yeah, there's not many of us. I feel like we're all like a lot of us came in the 70s and 80s. Like my parents came in the
I
late
think
70s.
in Australia it's not as common because my husband is a Melbourne-born Punjabi, but his parents were both born in India. They moved to Melbourne in the mid-1980s. And my husband tells me that there are not many Indians in Melbourne that have been there since before the 80s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the like late 70s, that's when my parents came, and they were like the first Sri Lankan Muslims in Australia or Melbourne, and so they set up like Sri Lankan Muslim organizations because it was, because they were very early. But yeah, it's pretty uncommon to see people before that, I think. But yeah.
So what's we'll quickly move on to your time on I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here.
Oh yeah.
What made you go on it, I guess? Obviously, they asked you to be on it, but what made you say yes? And how has it helped or changed your career after that?
Well, they actually asked me to go on the first season. I went on the third eventually. But the first season, I was like, I didn't know what this show was. And I was like, oh, I reckon they're going to like have me on as some sort of intruder. And they're just brand it like, oh, the Muslim intruder coming into the... And I was just like, I just thought it was just going to be some trashy reality television shit. And so I didn't want to do it. And then I saw the first season. I was like, okay, seems all right. Second season seemed good. And then the third season, they asked me again. And I just remember like going, oh, I don't know, like, they can still stitch you up. Reality television, they edit you, blah, blah, blah. And then I remember I was hanging out with my friend Waleed Ali, who's a
the project
guy. Yeah. So growing up with him, and he's a personality on TV, but also like one of my closest friends. And we were in New York at the time. He was doing some work, and I was there doing some other stuff. And I remember like I had a deadline to get back to them, and he's just like, "Look, do you want to do it? Do you not want to do it?" I was like, "I don't know." And he goes. And he goes, well, like for them to edit you badly, I think it was his advice to someone else. They go, you have to be consistently that way for them to make the story. Like if they want to paint you to be a villain, you're going to have to be a villain every day for them to find that footage to stitch together.
Yes.
So if you trust who you are, then, you should be fine. But, I don't know. It's up to you. I wouldn't do it, I think he said. But I was like, oh, all right, fine. Yeah. So I messaged my manager going, fine. And then from the time I said yes to the time I went on the show, I was just stressed out the entire time. I was like, I think I made the wrong decision. But then as soon as I went in, it just all went away. And I was just like, whatever, what can you do? And I just relaxed and enjoyed myself. And it was like really, really fun. It's like school camp. And for a comedian, like the whole point of the show is almost like to humiliate celebrities and put them out of their comfort zone. But when you're a comedian, like you don't mind being silly and doing silly things and humiliating yourself. That's sort of the job. So I had a great time. And since then, like doing shows, audiences almost like feel like they know me because they've watched me on that show every night. And so now I don't need to like qualify my jokes sometimes to explain that my allegiance is in Australia, but I've got some critical jokes to make, or like silly jokes. Like now they're just like, we know this guy, he's a nice guy, or they know who I am. So I can just say funny stuff now and they don't question who I am as a person. So it's been liberating, but also like I've had a lot of kids come to the show because they see me from the show they come to my live shows because they see me on TV on I'm a Celebrity and they expect family friendly comedy. And then like 10 minutes in, they're like, oh, and the parents are like, uh-oh, I think we took it to something it's not age appropriate. So that's also been a challenge explaining to TV audiences that like, hey, this is now my stand-up show. This is not what you see on TV.
Oh no.
And
just
sorry,
before
guys, I think the sound's just changed.
Oh, that's all right. Can you hear us now?
Hang on. Hello, can you say something?
Yep. Can you hear us?
It's going through.
Oh no.
Oh.
Can you hear us now?
One second. Okay, now.
Okay, you can hear us?
Oh,
cool. You've got a lot of technical difficulties.
I don't know what's going. You know what it is? Because I'm playing with this case, and every time I open it, I think it like tries to connect to this.
Yeah. fair. So just before we wrap up, obviously, like, you know, there's a lot more brown comedians coming up in New Zealand and Australia, which is like so good to see. Quite a few of my friends actually are in that comedian realm as well, and it's really cool to see. Like 10 years ago, I didn't think I would have seen that in New Zealand especially. But I just want to know, what advice do you have for any budding comedians?
Just watch a lot of comedy and do a lot of comedy, because there's no shortcuts to being a good comedian, except stage time and practicing and getting used to the feeling of bombing and just getting comfortable being on stage. Like, it's sort of like you just got to get your reps in, get your hours on stage up. That's just like, I would say that's advice to any comedian. But also if you're a brown comedian, you just got to kind of, often when you're in comedy clubs, everyone is white. There might be one or two brown people, but try as hard as you can to maintain your own perspective and your own voice, because when you eventually do put on a show, you'll be selling tickets, and hopefully you'll be selling tickets to people that relate to you. And yeah, the audience is not going to be like an audience at a comedy club. It might be a brown, or it'll be a multicultural audience. And if you have a voice that is true to who you are, you'll attract those people. So I think one of the risks of starting out in comedy is that you try to conform with the comedy community and appease the audience that's in front of you at comedy clubs, and that can bland you out, and you can lose your voice and your perspective. So just, even though it's uncomfortable, just try and maintain your perspective irrespective of who you're performing to. But also, just keep getting up after you bomb, because you will bomb and it feels like shit. But, if you want to be a comedian, there's already something wrong with you. So you would enjoy
That's a great note to finish on. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks for having me.
We know how busy you are with like Melbourne Comedy Festival, and then you're coming to New Zealand.
Come to New Zealand. Yeah.
Yes. So we would definitely publish this episode before you come to New Zealand.
Thank you so much. Thank you. You guys should come. Tell me when you come. Or if you want to,
yes,
you probably
we will come.
Auckland or Wellington?
Wellington.
We'll just message. Who was it that you messaged? Was it Hannah? Oh yeah, Ella. Oh, Ella. Yeah. Just let her know if you want to come, and then she'll sort your tickets out as well if you're free.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you for that. I was actually going to ask for some extra tickets anyway.
Yeah.
Since we were 40 minutes.
Yeah. Oh my God. Absolutely.
Also dinner.
No. Seriously, get as many as you like.
We're brown people, right? We always ask
totally. Seriously, like my friends just today are like, "Can I come with 7 people?" I'm like, 7 people? The show's been sold out for a week, but they're like, last minute.
They want backstage.
You can sit on the
That's
stairs.
what I really want.
I know. And they're like, oh, anyway. But no, seriously. But also, if you guys want to give some away, like, go for it. Like, if you want a couple, like, do a giveaway something.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll email Ella about that, and we can sort that out. Cool.
Easy.
Thank you so much for your time, and we really hope all you listeners enjoyed listening to this interview today. If you have any feedback, as always, just shout out to us on social media, or you can email us. Thank you. Cool.